Hi. I just wanted to talk to you for a short while about why this hurting world desperately needs women in leadership roles. And if you go back over history, we had a lot of women in leadership roles. And one of the most important roles was in the family. The woman was running the household. She nurtured the children and she breastfed the children and she cooked the food and washed the clothes and scrubbed floors and even took care of her husband if she was a married woman. There's so many different roles that a woman plays. Her, even if she has a job going to work in a paid position, once she comes home, her work still isn't done. So the question is, who said women are leaders? Well, God gave mankind, male and female, direction to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion. Genesis 1:28. He said dominion over it. So women received a distinctive role as a helper. Genesis 2:18. You know the story, and you can go back and you can read the story, but he made women a distinctive role he gave them. We got this role as a helper. And some Bibles may say help meet or help mate. And in that work. And female focus was always on supporting and benefiting others. Most of us women are always supporting someone else and benefiting others. And when sin interrupted the bliss, God called out the consequences of enmity and pain. When that sin interrupted the joyfulness that was in the garden, that was going on, that's when God called out the consequences of enmity and pain. But see, we're dealing with issues like poverty, poor health, illiteracy, and oppression. But this all began in the sin spoiled garden home. See, God promised a head bruiser he would put things right, but didn't hold back on describing the thorns and thistles that would spring up to make life painful until the days of restoration. See, God calls us to restoration, and we just got to listen and hear his voice and turn away from this sick sin world. See, God responded to sin's agony by enhancing the strategy of synchronized roles of his male and female assets. Eve received her name as the mother all living. Genesis 3:20. As the mother all living. See, every baby girl since has shared in that appointment while making her way through her own generation in a thorn weary world. See, the design for mankind is to fulfill, subdue, and manage earth, included an original pre-fall role for women as helpers in God's creative commission. Sin left people gasping for garden air, living a broken quality of life. See, since we now live conflicted women nurture. That's how we're living, conflicted. Since we live disconnected, women comfort. We're disconnected from that comfort. And we're impoverished. We need a women advocate to help with the impoverishment. We need women to nurture the conflicted. We need women to comfort the disconnected. See, the role of women's leadership is to diffuse the destructive forces caused by sin. God said women are leaders. We help accomplish his creative commission with an intentional female bent towards leading the way to diffuse the pain perpetrated by sin. We need women leaders. Contrary to belief, we need women leaders. But we need women leaders that are honest, women leaders that are not going to destroy man, women leaders that are not going to make up stories to get ahead, such as these feminist liberal groups. We need leaders, women leaders, to get back in the position that God has called them to. See, there are positions that God has placed us in, but he didn't place us in positions to be dishonest, place us into positions to destroy the nuclear family, place us in positions to destroy the heterosexual man. God did not place women in positions like that. God placed us in specific roles as the helpmate or helpmeet, as the nurturer. He placed us in positions to do the work, to help as a helpmeet, not to destroy the nuclear family or the heterosexual man. And you see these liberal women, liberal feminist groups out here trying to destroy the nuclear family and the heterosexual man. And that's something that we need to speak out for, because there's nothing wrong with women being in a leadership role, because he already placed us in it. Women have been leading the way in a leadership role for all time, when he established in the garden Adam and then Eve. When he created Eve, because he said Adam was lonely and needed a helpmeet. So then he established Eve from the rib of man, from Adam. And so that's what he wanted. That was the goal. That was the ultimate plan. But sin interrupted that plan. But however, God did not place women here on earth to destroy the heterosexual man and the nuclear family. See, there is a difference in being a good leader. You have to know how to follow Jesus in order to know your place in your role. And it's the same thing for man, knowing your relationship, having a relationship with Christ, and leading your family and setting an example. See, we have a lot of men that have walked away from the covenant, the true teachings of Jesus Christ, and they've walked away from their ordained purpose role that God has given them. And the women are stepping up, but they feel that they need to destroy the man, the heterosexual man. And that's not what God calls us to do, women. And so what makes women's leadership role unique? Well, after the great discontent imposed by sin before she had children, Eve was commissioned as the mother of all the broken living to come. See, women, you gotta be commissioned on what God has already called you to do. And if you're out here causing hate and discontent, you are not being able to help the broken. You're only causing more problems with the brokenhearted. We as women have to be good leaders in the role that God has already ordained and commissioned us to. And see, to mother life is to nurture, to comfort, to advocate, to organize, and to give birth to more life. See, those are the roles that God has commissioned for women, whether it's in a paid role or a volunteer role, but he has called us to nurture, to comfort, to advocate, to organize, and to give birth to more life. He didn't cause us to destroy the heterosexual man. He didn't cause us to destroy the nuclear family. He didn't cause us to create all type of chaos just to get ahead in this world. He did not cause us to do that. He did not commission us to do that. See, the news that life would be broken and lost was followed by news of appointed waymakers to care for and cradle those living in the aftermath. See, the leadership of women is part of God's coordinated plan to comfort mankind. To comfort mankind. And if you go and look at over in different countries in the United Nations, they are developing and modelizing the leadership of potential women. See, there are some data out there that shows an all-time high for the number of countries with women heads of state or heads of government, as well as for the global share of women's ministers. And I know that a lot of women and even men don't believe in women ministers. But this is the thing. God still called us to minister. When you go back and look at the nurturing, the comfort, the advocating, the organizing, and to giving birth to more life, we are ministers already called to do the work of what God has called us to. And around the globe, women do the divine work of dealing healthcare initiatives, ensuring adequate nutrition, operationalizing crisis plans, administrative education alternatives, maintaining peaceful homes, and advocating for justice. How many women you know, we get on these platforms and we are advocating for justice. And we have been asking men for so long to step up to advocate for justice. We need you men to get back in the position to advocate for justice, to help us and walk alongside us, walking with us, talking with us, holding our hand, embracing us, and walking with us every step of the way. God has called us to do it, but we also need the men to get back in the right position to do so forth with us. See, the functioning nurture brought into the leadership arena by women wired to lead helps ensure a balanced approach in addressing needs. Women bring an intuition ability to problem solve while balancing logistics with empathy towards individual personal disparities. And there's a lot of women out here that are lacking empathy because they got it wrong. They have got caught up in this sinful world, and it's all about material things and about me, instead of about the things that God has called us as women to do as the helper. See, by giving these feminine traits a seat at the table, complex issues benefit as God coordinates the gifts of men and women. With the strengths of women leaders are mobilized to set a course for compassion. Women, we got to get back to being compassionate. We got to self-evaluate. We need to be compassionate for our children, for our family. We need to be compassionate towards one another and others as God has called us, because God receives a greater glory while we make our way out of the garden. And the question is, again, there's another question is, why does leadership matter? Well, I'm glad you asked. Women have a role of restoration in God's glorious restoration plan. We have a role to complete. We have a role to perform in God's glorious restoration plan. And since mankind's fall, the updated role for women in a wounded world includes mothering the living. See, we need to mother the living while we have a chance, while we're down on earth. We need to do the work that God has called us. See, in a commission spoken to a female who has never given birth, this focus for female leadership comforts, advocates for those struggling against the thorns. Remember, Paul had a thorn in his side. And I'm just saying that because we see the thorns in people's sides, and God is calling us to nurture and advocate and comfort for those struggling against the thorns. Against the thorns. Against those thorns. Give me a moment. And so I want to, let you know about those thorns, because see, that thorn, it's a torment at times, and at the same time, it was given to him in order that he would not become conceited, and we see a lot of women that have become conceited, and so we need to remove the conceitedness and get back to nurturing and comforting and advocating for those struggling against the thorn in their side. And mothering children is holy work. It's holy work to mother children. Some people may say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to raise my children. I want to go to work and I want to be CEOs and presidents, and I want to have a lot of money and live in this big, beautiful home and drive this big, beautiful car. I don't want to do the mothering. But God says mothering children is holy work. But that's only part of the mothering work. And there's nothing wrong with having positions and being empowered. So don't get it twisted and get it wrong on what I'm saying to you. But women, if you have children, you have got to mother your children. Mothering children is holy work. And women are the womb where compassion and care come to life in a dying world. In the heart of a female leader, tenderness meets food insecurity. Encouragement meets the isolation of single parenting, and peacefulness invests in opposing ideologies, and concern aligns with vulnerability and pointed in the divine direction of loving on those suffering in sin's shadow. Women leaders go beyond problem solving and protecting. We are more than surface level thinkers. We nurture as we lead. See, women nurture as they lead. And if you are a good leader as a woman, you will nurture as you lead. We cannot be leading and being unnurturing. We cannot lead and be hateful. We cannot lead and not be a comfort. We cannot lead and we're not advocating for the suffering, for the one struggling with a thorn in their side. See, the world grasps for the good brought by godly women engaged in nurturing leadership. Okay, and 1 in 3 women throughout the world, what Haley Gray Scott says in her work, Dare Mighty Things, and I give credit to that, a total of 1 billion will be raped or beaten at some point in their lives. So the proportion of women exposed to physical violence in their lifetime ranges from 12% in China to 59% in Zambia. The world longs to be tended by the nurturing nature of more women leaders. And I'm sure the percentage is higher when you start to look across the country of what that says. But women get caught up in a war of words. And this is true. And we see it today. Women caught up in a war of words about levels and labels of leadership. We have this Western-minded preoccupation with our own significance rather than our own serving. This is the Western-minded thought process. The Western-minded preoccupation. And women that are in leader, not all women, so don't get it twisted. But the accountability has to be spoken about. We talk about men being accountable, but we have to talk about women being accountable also. We cannot continue to be self-serving. Again, there's nothing wrong with women in leadership, but we cannot continue to be self-serving. We cannot. See, Alexandre Harvard in Virtual Leader, he's a virtuous leader. He says modern society's weird melange of individualism and collectivism has spawned generations of small, self-centered people on the make. We see it today. There's so many small, self-centered people, and they're rising up. These small, self-centered people. And they've made it about themselves, self-serving. But why are women leaders wasting time? See, we're wasting time when we don't do the work that God has already ordained for us back in the Garden of Eden. The serpent first suggested we should want more. He placed doubt in Eve's mind. Back in the garden, he placed doubt in Eve's mind. Oh, no, he just don't want you to know anything. And Eve fell for it. In the garden, Satan launched a discontentment campaign. He did, against Christ. Yeah, he did. And that bad apple still captivates us today. It's telling us that women cannot do great eternal things while being holy and godly and nurturing and comforting and an advocate. That's what it's saying. Because see, there's so much discontent going on right now that you're not able to do great eternal things because you're caught up with earthly things instead of eternal things. And you know, we have so much when it comes to women in leadership roles. There's a wide open field. It's a wide open field. And instead of delaying with disagreements, because that's what's happening, is it's the field is wide open for leadership of women, but it's delayed with disagreements about what that scope includes, opportunity. And we're seeking opportunity in earthly things instead of eternal things, and working out to bring a woman's essential qualities to the world. There have been and still are points of contention. It's nothing new. There's a lot of contention going on, and it's even more since we see what's happening and how women are being used to bring down our own black men and to bring down men in general and the injustice of men. We see how they're being used. But that's not what God called us for as women. He didn't call us to be used to participate in contention and hate. He called us to be an advocate, a nurturer, to comfort, to lead in the right perspective of what he has called us to do, and to help for the one struggling with a thorn in their side and the impoverished. And if you go back and look at the last centuries, it reveals that this contention and all of that has been inserted. And everywhere we turn and we look, it's been inserted. And we know that all women won't be welcome and haven't been welcome at all leadership tables. We understand that. And we understand that women leaderships have become unpopular because of all of the injustice and the false allegations, and that's been alleged false allegations that have been thrown out there on heterosexual men. The family, nuclear family, has been broken down. We see it today, and it has caused a lot of challenges and barriers, even for the women that haven't participated in this feminist liberalism movement. It's put up barriers even for those women that still want to do the work that God has called them to, because now you have contention and you have confusion and lack of trust. And I'm not saying, men, that you shouldn't feel the way you feel, but what I'm saying, women, as leadership roles that God has already ordained and placed on us, we have got to get back to that purpose. Because women designed us for a purpose. And women who make a difference have a different way of embracing leadership. And if you are that woman that's doing the work that God has called you, I pray for you that God will continue to strengthen and empower you and lift you up to do that work. Because we know that not every woman in leadership is doing that type of work because they have gotten caught up in earthly things, searching and seeking and striving for things that are earthly and not eternal. See, we don't need to keep wasting time on words inciting things that's not going to profit man. We don't have time to waste. We need to cooperate. We need cooperation, joint leadership. See, let me tell you something, women. Great women refuse to be sucked into small arguments. And we see so many women getting caught up in small arguments, getting sucked up in it, but they are taking time away and delaying the work that God has already called us to. There's too much pain in this world to let this much potential be wasted. See, when God created Eve as the helpmeet, he knew that he was creating somebody with great potential to do the work that he's called us to. And we have wasted too much time, and there's too much pain in this world for our potential to continue to be wasted. While the world gaps and graps over arguing associated with the leadership of women. And men, if you go back and read your Bibles, you will understand the difference. But we see today that people would rather bicker and fight and battle and argue and become self-centered and fight over power and leadership roles, while all the while we're delaying what we should be doing to work towards eternal things, to help one another and to strive to get people back in the place that God has called them so that our country can get back in order. See, our country is never going to be in order the way that God ordained if women and men do not get back in the right position of what God has already ordained and called us to, because you're too preoccupied with physical, earthly things instead of eternal things. See, pain isn't pretty. And if you suffered pain in your life, it's not a pretty thing. And neither is the potential of foolishness and contention and confusion, because God is not about those things. He's not about confusion and contention. He's about us doing the work that he's called us to. God commissioned women with divine direction to help lead the way in caring for a sin-hurt world. And we have to do the work. We have got work to do, women leaders, including myself. We have got work to do. And see, what does women leadership look like? What does it look like? Well, we all over the world. You got villages, you got towns, cities, parishes and counties and whatever else, and nations. Comfort comes down and goes out like a welcome bomb from the heart of God through female hands. See, like every generation of women, from the garden peace to the global pandemic, the mothers of all the living lead the way in contributing to the coordinated care creation needs. How many women have you seen out there working for the good? Because there's a lot of women out there working for the good. And I want to remind women, the ones that are doing the work, thank you. We appreciate you. Continue to do the work. Don't give up. Strive. Because God loves you and he will continue to empower you as long as you're doing the work that he has ordained and called you to as a woman. We thank you on today and we lift you up. But see, wherever she leads, God pours out the nurturing the hurting world waits for. It starts in homes, building healthy people who can understand, communicate, and serve one another. It extends to communities where empathy guides interactions at parks, parent committees, boardrooms, businesses, policy negotiations, classrooms, and clinics. But let me go back to this one right here. It starts in homes. It starts in homes, building healthy people who can understand, communicate, and serve one another. That's where it starts, ladies, women. That's where it starts. Teaching young girls at a young age. Forget about teaching them to twerk. Forget about teaching them all of that. Teach them about understanding, communication, and serving one another. It starts in the home, building healthy people. It's not about all that other stuff and spending $29,000 or whatever it is. It's not about that. It starts in the home. And then it extends. We got to get back to the work that God has called us to. See, because again, without the essential role of women leaders, we're going to continue to gasp for air garden air in this world. See, so about that organization for women in leadership, But if you know one devoted to getting focused on the divine work entrusted to Eve and on her daughters for the needs of a thorn-weary world, a thorn-weary world. Say it with me, a thorn-weary world that we're in. That's what's happening. And we got to get back to the work and be devoted and focused. You know, we just don't have time to continue to delay the work that God has called us to strive towards the eternal things. Stop wasting time on earthly things. And then, how can women lead today? How can women lead today? See, we can't afford to sit over coffees and lattes and teas and argue about labels to lead by. Well, I want my title to be that. I need a label. And I'm going to argue about that label that I feel they should have given me. See, we already have, when it comes to women leaders, you see so many women leaders in the world today. We already have a slice of the pie. We already have that influence as the mother of all the living. But with the contribution of women as an essential component of God's plan to comfort mankind until we get back to the garden living, garden living, the hurting have a better chance of living. So if we don't get back to that, they don't have a better chance of living. God wants to give you a more excellent way. He wants to help someone. God always gives a way out. That's good news. That's important. God always gives a way out. He always does. He always gives a way out. He does. He does. He does. And, you know, because of that pandemic, because of the pandemic that we're still in, let me tell you something. There's opportunities for women to engage their essential perspective and skills. But when we allow agendas, and we've seen it play out in the White House with women and women going back and forth with men, and we've seen it over and over and over. And when we allow political agendas and other type of agendas to drag us from our great work as great women, keeping us bound in arguments about titles and terminology, brokenness goes unanswered. Brokenness goes unanswered. We're in this battle that we don't need to be in because God already structured the family. He already ordained what women should be doing. See, let me tell you something, women. We all need to understand something. And if you don't get it, please get it. I'm not saying to be critical, but women have a responsibility and need to be accountable. We can't keep bashing men. We can't keep holding them accountable, but not holding women accountable. And a women's war is not against men or against the God of men. See, that's the thing. Women have made it. And I'm not saying all women, but there are a lot of women out here that are coming in multitudes to bring a war and rage a war against men. And women, you need to understand, we should not rage war against men or against the God of men. Should not be our focus. Men are not your battle. Men are not the ones that you should be raged in war against. We need to walk hand in hand. We need men leadership roles. We need men, and we need to walk side by side, hand in hand, as God has called us to get back to the real work of eternal things instead of earthly things. And a woman's war is not against men or against the God of men, but against the evil one who feeds the war and those who love his wicked ways. That's what we should be working towards, is eternal things and restoration and moving people away from the evil sins of this world and wicked ways. God gave us instruction to do the work, and we have gotten caught up in moving away from the work that we're more focused on small arguments, and we have came up against men when men is not the enemy. Men are not the